I have traditionally not been a good listener. I was thinking about stuff I wanted to do next. I was thinking about what I wanted to say. I was busy judging that person or putting them in a box and coming up with some simple solution for their problem they're telling me about. I did all these mind games. And one of the things I've been practicing in the last period of time, not that long, is mindfulness, like really being super aware, like of what's going on around me, being aware of the moment, not thinking about the past, which we tend to either think about the past or the future, right? We reminisce about the past or we stress about the future. I used to get massages and I'd lay there thinking about the next thing I want to do. Well, I'm changing my ways, baby. Now it's like, dang it, just enjoy the moment, right? And mindfulness is all about like just being in the moment, being super aware, and actually being aware of your thoughts, because thoughts come and go, right? And I used to think that just because I had a thought that was some indictment on who I was. Like if I had some terrible thought, like, oh, you're such a terrible person. Now I realize thoughts are just thoughts. They just come and go. And I get to control what I think about. And I can reject a thought, or I can accept a thought, I can pursue it, or I can say, shut up, go away. And so just to be mindful in the moment. And when I'm with someone, to try to be really fully with them, to not be multitasking. We have these amazing interrupters in our lives, don't we? We have so much that can take us away from the moment. You know, like these phones that we have in our pocket, they can connect us with somebody on the other side of the world, and they can disconnect us from the person sitting right in front of us. So to be fully present and fully aware are really good skills to develop, and they are certainly necessary for listening.
Gortz is the right-hander. Will Holman the lefty.
Gary?
Yeah. Oh, come on, really?
You got 3 lemons.
What my baby wants, my baby gets. You know that.
No, but I wanted 12. Baby wanted 12.
Why would you want 12 lemons?
Because I'm making a 12-lemon centerpiece.
So no one's actually even eating them? They're show lemons?
Yeah, they're just show lemons. Shown in the center of the table. Glad you find that amusing, but I cannot fill a vase with only 3 lemons.
Well, can't you just use, like, maybe a drinking glass?
I could use a
You
drinking...
can have a smaller version of a centerpiece.
I'm not gonna use a drinking glass for our centerpiece.
You know what? I got an idea. Why don't we go ahead and scratch the centerpiece idea altogether? Because the chicken that burnt my mouth could maybe use a little bit of lemon on top of it. Guess what? Now we made a better meal versus something visually nice to look at.
What are you doing? What's happening here? What are you doing? What are you doing?
I had such a long day on the bus. I need a little bit of downtime. My feet are killing me.
Come on, my feet are killing me too. I worked all day. Went to the market. I cleaned this entire condo, and then I've been cooking for the last 3 hours. Come on, help set the table.
Sweetheart,
What?
you've done such a great job already. Don't you want to finish it yourself and have that personal power, that accomplishment?
Set the table.
Listen to me. Do you think that when Michelangelo, right, was painting the 16th chapel, that he said, hey guys, you know, I did pretty good on the first 15 chapels, but why don't you help me design this one? And maybe you could help me, give me a brush, and you guys can grab brushes and we can all make a great chapel. No, he didn't. And you want to know what the results were? A masterpiece.
Okay. It's the Sistine Chapel, not the 16th. And I bet when Michelangelo asked for 12 brushes, they didn't bring him 3.
Yeah, okay. All the talking is really starting to drain me, and now I'm gonna have to watch the highlights later to see what I missed here.
Typical human response when we know we've screwed up, instead of taking the blame and apologizing, we start projecting, right? And we start making it all about the other person. So here's a few myths. One is that hearing is the same as listening. Listening is natural and effortless. All listeners hear the same message. We know that's not true because we've already studied perceptions, right? All right, so here are some examples.
Kenny, I need 50 pounds of roast beef. Sorry, Pat, we're all out.
Oh, don't give me that.
What, did your wife wolf it down for breakfast? That came out wrong. Look, look at me. I mean, we probably waited.
So I think the meeting went really well.
Great job, Abby. I wish some of our managers worked as hard as you do.
Well, I guess you'll just have to promote me to manager then, huh? Oh, there's a new sheriff in town. I understand that I have to work my way up.
Hey, baby.
Hey, what's up?
Not much. Just wanted to talk to the most beautiful girl in the world, that's all.
That's sweet.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's just nice to know that I'm the only man in your world. I am the only man in your world, right? Baby?
Switch to the network with the fewest dropped calls.
I think we can all identify with that. When we're with somebody that's not a good listener, it feels like a dropped call. Listening improves employment advances. Like, why should I care about this, right? Why should I actually study this? Listening is crucial to maintaining relationships, and it brings personal and professional payoffs. And if you look at the top things that employers are looking for, they're looking for people with lots of abilities. And one of them is being able to listen effectively. People go into job interviews and, everybody wants to put on their best face and like super impress them and everything. And sometimes we don't even listen to the questions that are being asked of us. We give the answers that we want to, or we just talk over them or whatever. And that would not be a good interview, right? If you're not even listening to the questions the potential employer is asking you and you just go off on your own. That would be sort of a subtle way of shooting yourself in the foot. We don't come out of the womb necessarily knowing how to listen, right? It's a gained skill. Most of us can hear when we come out of the womb, but learning how to be a good listener is something else. I like this quote: listening is not merely not talking, even though that is beyond most of our powers. It means taking a vigorous human interest in what is being told us. And again, if you're not interested in the topic, if you're interested in the person, then you will try hard to give them a listen.
It's just, there's all this pressure, And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. All of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't...
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can go on? We can work it out. We can work it out.
We have to listen, and we have to try to figure out what people want of us in a situation, right? So do people just want somebody to hear them while they vent, because they need to process or they need to get out the stuff? Are they looking for solutions? Because if they're just wanting to vent, but they really don't want your input, then trying to give them solutions is not a good strategy. So, what do they want? What do they want from us? Do they need nurturing? Do they, what do they need? Okay. So we come up with these different ways of some principles on effective listening. So the Hurrier model. So hearing, understanding, remembering, interpreting, like what the heck are they saying? Evaluating, and responding. So hearing is a physiological thing, right? The sound waves come in the ear and they do their thing and you hear somebody, right? But understanding is when you really are cognitively engaged, where you're thinking about their words and what they mean. You're thinking, you're looking at them, you're thinking about what's going on, and you're trying to sort it through based on previous knowledge that you have. Listening is it's a very active process. And then remembering the ability to recall information. So a lot of times we'll be like, yeah. And we're not really understanding. And then of course, memory is ridiculous, right? Have you ever been to a class? We've all done this, right? You go to a class and you sit there for the whole time and blah, 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 blah. And then you have no idea what you just heard later on, right? Or sometimes we do this with books too. We can do the same thing. You know, like you read a chapter and or you read a page and you're like, I have no idea what the fat I just read, right? So being actively engaged. Interpreting is the ability to see a situation from the other person's perspective and then to let their partners know what they've understood. So saying it back to them. So if I hear what you're saying this, or maybe we ask follow-up questions. Evaluating is using our individual perceptual filters to make judgment on what we heard. Now, the problem is a lot of times we'll shut people down that way. Well, you know, like we even have times where like we know somebody's political persuasion. And so we're thinking in the back of our head while they're talking, well, they don't have any authority because maybe you're on the other side of the political spectrum and you're like, they're full of crap. I'm not, you know, but we actually, I think I like what someone said earlier, that we actually have things to learn, and just connecting with that person without judging them or judging what they're talking about can be incredibly helpful. Responding is the final step of choosing an appropriate response. So again, what is being called upon for you, you know? So there's different kinds of listening. So let me just talk about these quickly. Discriminative listening is a focused and usually instrumental type of listening that is primarily physiological and occurs mostly at the receiving stage of the listening process. Here we engage in listening to scan and monitor our surroundings in order to isolate particular auditory or visual stimuli. It's amazing how disconnected we are from nature. And so we can be outside and totally be oblivious to the birds chirping or even the traffic noise. Informational listening entails listening with the goal of comprehending and retaining. So hopefully this is the kind of listening that you do in class. If you're listening to the news, you know, is it just going in one ear and out the other? Is it informing how you view the world? Like, what is going on? We engage in informational listening when taking notes in class, watching the news, or paying attention to driving directions. Not cool if you ask somebody how to do something or how to get somewhere and then you don't pay attention. Critical listening entails listening with a goal of analyzing or evaluating a message. So we do this all the time when we're exposed to commercials. Critical listening doesn't necessarily mean criticizing what we're hearing, but rather means evaluating what we're hearing. So empathic, you guys know this word? It's a cool word. You're going to sound really smart if you use the word empathic at the dinner table. Empathic listening is just empathetic listening, okay? So you're trying to understand not only what the person is saying, but what's the thinking and feeling behind it. Perspective taking helps us understand a situation from another's point of view. Empathic concern is the ability to identify how someone is feeling and to experience those feelings ourselves. We can tell. Let's watch this.
Today we're going to discuss improving your active listening skills. I have to say that one of the most rewarding skill sets that I've learned, because it's really affected my personal growth and also become the biggest gift that I could give to someone else, was learning the skill of becoming an active listener. Now, that phrase itself might be confusing to people because, again, it was a skill set I had to learn. It was not something that I was born with as a skill. Active listening, meaning being fully present when you're in a conversation with someone. Have you ever noticed that you might be sharing something that's really important to you, or you just want to connect with somebody, and as you look at them, you can tell just by the expression on their face that they're not paying attention to anything you're saying? And as you think about that, how does it make you feel? I know for me, it made me feel like I was not important to them. What I was sharing had no meaning. And through some different processes, I learned how to turn off my own brain when I was getting into conversations and actually be an active listener. You know, when I was younger, the most important thing in a conversation was to make sure that people understood what I was trying to share with them. You know, my perspective was the most important thing. And what I learned over time was actually the best way for me to grow and the best way for me to nurture a relationship was to stop caring about them understanding my point and start caring about me understanding theirs. You know, so often we are in a conversation and we're not paying any attention to what the person's saying because we're just waiting for our turn to talk, or we're so focused on wanting to make sure we get our point across that we're actually having a conversation with ourselves in our own heads while the other person's talking to us. It was funny, there was a facilitator who did an exercise, and the point of the exercise was to bring two people on stage who had totally opposing belief systems regarding a specific topic. And the topic that this facilitator chose was it ethical for someone to sleep with someone that they just met? And the one person, very religious in their viewpoints, and the other person, very open-minded in their views. And the idea was for person A to share in 2 minutes or less why they believed that it was ethically okay to sleep with someone that you just met. Person B was not allowed to counter, was not allowed to debate. They were just supposed to listen. And when person A was done, their job was to repeat back to the person who just shared the details that would allow that first person to know that they were understood by person B. They had to feel completely understood. Now, as the facilitator's setting us up, I'm sitting there going, okay, maybe 3, 4, 5 interactions. They'll tweak it. They'll get it down. They'll get to that point. 45 minutes later, person A finally was able to say, yes, I feel you understand me now. 45 minutes for understanding somebody's perspective, perception? I really had to think about that. It's amazing how many of us enter into a conversation and we're stuck in what we call our model of the world, meaning that as you've grown up, each person has different experiences. They come up with different belief systems about themselves, about other people, about how the world operates. They have different values, different rules based on the environment they grew up in. And this is the filter of how they view everything that goes on around them. To make this a little easier, imagine that when you were born, you had a pair of blue sunglasses that just wrapped completely around, and everything that you saw through this blue filter. And another person, when they were born, was given these red sunglasses, and everything that they saw came through this red filter. No matter how much you looked at and discussed something that was sitting in front of you, the two of you would never agree on what you were seeing. That's model of the world if you're locked in that perception. Becoming an active listener for me was that shift of not caring that you understand what I'm trying to say. It's about me taking off my sunglasses, throwing them off to the side, and looking at the world through your sunglasses. Now, that's hard for people to do. So how do you accomplish seeing things from that other person's perspective? It's questions. One of the best ways to become an active listener is when someone's sharing something with you, ask them questions for specificity. As they share something, when they're done, please don't interrupt them. But when they're done, say, when you were talking about this experience that you just had, how did you feel? And let them respond. And after they finish responding, well, now when that happened, what were you thinking? The idea is to do everything you can. Ask them questions to elicit information that will allow you to see it from their perspective. The other thing that's very important, if you're going to be an active listener, is to feed it back to make sure that you are seeing it from their perspective. So important that you make sure you don't interrupt them in the process. And I'm going to explain why in a moment. When they stop, say, now what you just shared with me, just so I make sure I understand this, you said, and you feed it back to them. Do I understand you correctly? If someone did that to you, how would that make you feel? Would you really feel like they cared, that they were communicating? I'll tell you, for me, one of the personal rules that I have that it doesn't make me mad at somebody, but what it does is it shuts me down from being open and communicating with them. As you've probably learned from this video series, I'm pretty open in what I share with people. And I'm okay with that. Unless someone interrupts me, they've asked me a question, I'm responding, they interrupt me with something that's not relevant to what we're just talking about. At that moment, I feel like they really didn't care what my answer was. So I'm not rude, I just don't pursue that conversation any farther. I close down, I don't share it with them. Being present for someone when they're sharing thoughts, ideas, hopes, dreams with you is one of the greatest gifts that you can give. And that also comes in when a third party tries to interrupt you. Have you ever been having a conversation and you're really working on connecting and all of a sudden, third person walks up and, hey, how you doing? And the whole conversation shifts and you're sitting there going, I guess my role wasn't as important as I thought it was. I didn't even notice I did this. People pointed it out for me because they were saying, something I really respect what you do is if somebody comes up, you'll actually put your hand up and stop the person who's trying to interrupt and keep your focus with the person you're talking to. I never realized that that was a part of my actions until somebody pointed it out. And when they did, I saw that the reason I did that was because I knew how I felt when people interrupt me or when someone drags the attention out to somewhere else. Communication is how we grow. It's how we connect. And it's one of the most important things that you can do is to be present in that moment. So really quickly, to wrap up this episode, I want to give you 2 exercises for this week. Okay, the first exercise is when you're in a conversation with somebody, do everything you can to be fully present, fully aware. If you start finding that you're thinking of what your reaction is going to be, what your response is going to be, what you're going to say, I challenge you to stretch your comfort zone and actually say to the person you're talking to, excuse me, could you stop just for 1 second? I apologize. I got distracted. My mind was over in another place. And what you're saying to me is really important. So could you please say it again? How would that make you feel if someone shared that with you? The second part of the exercise is in your conversations this week, I really would like you to do the best you can to get rid of your model of the world. Take away your preconceptions and do everything that you can to understand the other person's point of view. Make that your priority. Active listening will allow you to grow tremendously because it shapes and reshapes your ideas about yourself, your beliefs, the things that are important to you. It allows you to connect at a deeper level.
I love that. Be fully present, fully aware. That says everything, doesn't it? You don't have to, your head doesn't have to be somewhere else. Your heart doesn't have to be just be there. And we're so flipping task oriented. We're so stressed. We're always like, oh, I got all this stuff to do and everything. Screw that stuff. Just be fully present, fully aware. Okay. So an expression that I really like is seek first to understand rather than be understood. And I think all of us, we just so want somebody to understand us and to like us. And so we're all caught up in that. But we can turn that around and we can be that for other people.